Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/politics by Jake. Okay, everybody, once again, it is Friday morning at 7 a.m. or thereabouts, and I am Jake, and this is Politics by Jake. And we're here giving our usual bi-weekly, Mondays and Fridays, 7 a.m., KCAA, our usual bi-weekly strategic overview where we really take a historical perspective. And one of the things that we try to do, number one, we try to do political education because and this is just my usual ordinary blurb, but I look at the Democrats, and I'm going to talk about this more a little later with regard to what happened to Senator Padilla of California, but I look at the Democrats, and we've kind of got the wrong kind of Democrat in office. You've heard me talk about this before, but we have the corporatist, Clintonista, Democratic Leadership Council Democrat. These are the Democrats about whom Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who seems now to be turning away from her so-called democratic socialist roots, which, as I've said to you before, I don't even understand why she says that. Because if you go to her platform, if you go to what she stands for, there's nothing in it that's socialist. There's nothing in it that's democratic socialist. Bernie Sanders is the same way. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, I think maybe she's wising up. And, she may be wising up because she is contemplating either A, a run for the Senate, or B, a run for the presidency in 2028. And if she holds on, and she's smart, she's smart, and she knows the kind of corporate Democrats that I'm talking about. These are not Democrats. These are Democrats who, and this dovetails with what I've talked about with regard to the Biden coup, because as you know, it is at Politics by Jake here, it is our opinion that Biden was forced out and it was essentially a coup. And what happened is that the corporate Democrats, of which I just spoke, who were led by Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, came and they basically said to Biden, listen, we'll give you like 2 or 3 weeks to get out. And if you don't get out, we're going to go against you and we're going to start talking you down and go against you. And here's a guy who all he wanted to do, I say all he wanted to do. He wanted to do a lot of stuff. That was the problem that they had with him, because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in the secret meetings in the House where she listened to her fellow Democrats talking about what to do about the election, that the cry from them was, my donors. And who was she talking about? She was talking about the financial criminals, as George Carlin calls them, who run Wall Street. She was talking about the finance oligarchs. She was talking about these very corporatists that the Clintonistas, the Democratic Leadership Council, has driven the Democratic Party to, and away from its New Deal background, towards a more moderate. And I think the idea is, honestly, because it's all about money, I'm sorry to say this, but the baseline element of all this is money, more financially lucrative situation, and it has drawn these kind of Democrats who in many cases are Democrats in name only, and they don't fight, and they're not really serious about the democratic ideals. They're not really serious about the New Deal. They're just basically serious about getting elected. And if they don't go ahead and do what their donors want them to do, and from what AOC said, the donors were yelling and screaming and they were threatening to cut off funding for these Democrats. If they didn't do what they said, they were going to cut funding. And AOC rightly said, and I mean, she's done yeoman service for people in the movement by pointing this out, that she said they should have been saying, if they were really true Democrats, they should have said, not my donors, but my constituents. What is it that they are calling and crying out for? But instead, it was my donors. And this is the tip-off. I mean, a lot of times you have to kind of read between the lines, and in the silence that goes on inside the Beltway, you don't necessarily find out and know just exactly what is going on. But AOC really helped us out here when she said this and indicated that this is a situation where the corporate Democrats forced Biden out. And really, it's the finance oligarchs, it's the financial criminals who run Wall Street. Again, George Carlin's words, not mine. I am the messenger. I am delivering that message. But I mean, I kind of tend to think so. And all we have to do is look at the casino economy that exists today, the hedge funds, the derivatives, the stunning amount of crypto, and actually derivatives are bigger than crypto. Crypto is about, I don't know, it's something like, 3 trillion. And derivatives is something like 4 trillion or something like that. And we've talked about this before, and I don't want to get into this now because I hadn't actually intended on talking about this. But derivatives is like a bet on a bet. It's a game of chance. It's a casino. And this is what the markets, the financial markets, have devolved into. Crypto is kind of the digitized smoke and mirrors confidence game. It's kind of become like that. And so why did they want Biden out? And let me just say before I even say why they wanted Biden out, they didn't want Harris in either. But they thought that Harris, who is a corporatist, they thought that they could maybe work with her, that what they wanted to have was an open convention. And this is kind of an electoral abomination, because you already had your candidate. Joe Biden had won all the primaries. He'd won 87% of the votes that were cast in those primaries. He was the candidate. But why did they want to get rid of him? Well, because, and the incredible thing about this is, and I'm not sure that another person would have said this. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure that I would have said it. And I tend to be a little forthright in my speech. But one of the things that he said, he could have said, you billionaires, you scum-sucking billionaires. He said, you guys, you've gotten rich. You've gotten rich off of America through all of the blessings that this country offers to help people like you. And you've gotten rich. You've made it. That's great. That's tremendous. Good for you. Now, what about this? Why don't you pay? And here's what I'm thinking. And I'm speaking for Joe Biden here, okay? I didn't come up with this. Joe Biden came up with this. Let's do this. Number one, elect me. And in December of 2025, when the 2017 tax scam benefits, which overwhelmingly benefited the rich and overwhelmingly placed a increased tax burden on the middle class, which, by the way, is the great economic engine of the country and of the world. Let's have those, they're sunsetting. And if I allow them to continue, they'll continue forever. And there will be that oppression, and there will be that concomitant blessing, if you want to call it that, or benefit to you guys. why don't we do this? You guys are so rich. Why don't we just sunset those? Why don't we allow those to expire? And that's the one thing he said. And the next thing he said was, I've got this tax plan. Let's do this. Let's do, say, a 25% alternative minimum tax. Let's do a 28% top rate, okay, on corporate income tax. And that's on the gross. That's not, that's before deductions or itemizations or anything like that. But let's do that. Let's do a 28% top rate on taxes. And, in the 50s, in the days of Ike, the top rate was 90% on the gross. And I'm kind of presaging what I'm about to say here, but the companies got along really well on that. They did really well. They had no problem with that at all. And then he said, and let's do this. Let's take the capital gains and let's do a 28% tax on your capital gains. And capital gains is really one of the big ways that people with a lot of money make more money. And let's tax them at that rate, not when you sell them, but just as they're valued, in the year that you're holding on to them. And he reduced the whole thing down to one simple statement. Why don't you guys, it's great that you got rich, pay your fair share. The hue? Can you imagine in the boardroom? There's this one movie by Mel Brooks. It's called Silent Movie. And I wish I was doing a video cast. I can't do that right now. But there's this one situation where there was a scene where it was in the boardroom. And, this is a humorous movie. Mel Brooks is he does funny movies, humorous movies. And there was this one scene where something like that was proposed. And I don't want to get into it too much except to tell you. But all of the board people sitting at the board meeting started frothing at the mouth. I can see it in my mind's eye right now, and I recommend to you to go to YouTube because you could probably access it on YouTube and you can get that movie. But I mean, it's just the funniest thing. And this was back, I don't know, in what, 76, 77, 78, something like that. And Mel Brooks called it right. Because Mel Brooks was on the inside and Mel Brooks knew. And this is exactly, I guarantee you, this is exactly what happened to the finance oligarchs and the corporatists and the George Carlin statement about the financial criminals who run Wall Street, which probably is true. Sorry to call you guys out, but it's probably true the way you do it. I could go over the way you do it, and it's like I said, it's like the casino economy. It's like a casino. And they just completely freaked out. What? Us? Pay our fair share? Are you kidding me? But that's the way it was. And they just could not abide that. And that was just, that was it. And that was easy. They just pay our fair share. Are you nuts? Are you crazy? Get rid of this guy. And that's what happened. That's what they did. They got rid of him. And you will note, among other things that could be said, that Kamala Harris came out not too long after she became the candidate. And she said this, and it's very telling, because she's trying to balance her candidacy and her possible presidency to curry favor with those very same corporatists, those very same financial elites, those very same financial oligarchs, those very same George Carlin named financial criminals who run Wall Street, in order to preserve her presidency. And that's the idea. That's the difference between the DLC Democrats and the New Deal Democrats. That's the idea. And she dropped the rate. She dropped the top rate from 28% to 18%. And this is how she justified it. She said, because we know the reason why she justified it. She said, we know that when business is sustained and suckered and supported, everybody makes money. So I guess what's good for the finance oligarchs and the corporatists and the financial elites is good for America. And this is the fix is in. I mean, this is obvious. So there you have it. And I want to just say to all the new listeners, I guess we have some guy from Italy who called in last week, talked about something about the Mexican flag versus the American flag. We want to welcome you to the show, and let's take a minute and let's have a commercial and a couple of announcements, and we'll be right back. And this is Politics by Jake. And now let's pause for a brief commercial message. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting, and I'm back again to talk to you about one of these little wrinkles that can cause a lot of problems and a lot of happiness for people who actually want to own a business, or who have just started a business, or who have been operating a business now for some time. It doesn't really matter. My guess is that you wanted asset protection. That's one of the reasons for starting a business. You wanted to grow wealth, and you wanted to protect the wealth that you created, and you thought that a limited liability company or a corporation would be the way to do that. But did you know that just creating a corporation or a limited liability company does not guarantee that at all? Do you want to know if there's any way to fix that? Go to www.jakelaw.me, that's JAKELAW.me, and watch my video where I talk about this very important thing, and then set up a time where we can have a phone conference, or call me directly now at 573-454-1168. That's 573-454-1168. Call now. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. If you're getting value from this show, if it's making you think or helping you see things more clearly, consider supporting it. Just go to patreon.com/politics by Jake. Kick in whatever you think it's worth. That's how we grow. That's how we stay independent. Thanks. Okay, and this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. So one thing, and I kind of have to apologize in a way for this, because I should have reported this a week ago. And I'm kind of actually, in a way, ashamed and embarrassed in myself that I didn't. The only excuse that I make is that there's just so much going on, and I'm going to try to catch up to what's going on right now in the show so that I can get you up to date on this. But this happened last week, and it has to do with Kristi Noem and Senator Padilla. And this is really important, and there are several reasons why it's important. I mean, it's this unbelievable outrage. This is an administration, number one, they're illegitimate, and number two, they're out of control. Number three, they're filled with political fanatics like Stephen A. Miller and Steve Bannon. They're filled with rich people who have no concept of the plight of ordinary people. And they're filled with, and sometimes these things overlap, by the way, they're filled with religious fanatics of the Christian persuasion who have a messianic and apocalyptic view according to the way they interpret their holy book, which is mostly it's the New Testament, Old Testament too, but the New Testament, mostly the New Testament, and the story there of Jesus Christ, and the twisting and turning of some of the things that are in there about what the winding up stages will be as far as when God is supposed to come again and the things that will happen before God comes again, and so on and so forth. There's something called the rapture, which, in my opinion, I've looked carefully. I really can't find anything about, just the most vague statement. I think it's in Timothy, but don't even quote me on that, because I'm speaking off the top of my head there. But there's something that could be interpreted and has been interpreted as the removal of people who are righteous off of the earth so they don't have to partake of all of the evils that will come upon the earth in consequence of the disobedience of mankind, and so on and so forth. They'll just be removed from the earth. It's called the rapture. Basically, they'll be taken up into heaven, or they'll be taken up into the sky or some other planet, or I don't know what it is. But that's basically what's going to happen. So I don't see anything in there that indicates in the slightest that something like this will happen. Well, maybe in the slightest, just the very slightest, but not more than the slightest, okay? These are the people who infest the government right now. And I want to talk about that. But the first thing I want to talk about, and this is kind of a function of this, we had in between June 12th and June 17th of 2025, Senator Alex Padilla attended on June 12th. He attended a DHS press conference in Los Angeles. It was led by Secretary, you'll excuse the expression, maybe Secretary of the Stenography Pool, Kristi Noem. She's unfortunately she's a cabinet secretary. I mean, it's just, what can I say? We've only been through 6 months of this. We're going to go through potentially 3.5 more years of it. But really, if we can flip the House and the Senate to a great degree, which these people are doing so much, they're doing so many crazy, outrageous things. Apparently, they're coming really close to getting us into a war with Iran right now. We're going to talk about that. And I've got some other stuff that Kennedy is doing, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the insane stuff that he's doing. I don't even know if I'm going to have time for that. But anyway, getting back to this, and Alex Padilla is, what do you want to call him, a Hispanic? He's a Latino, but he's an American. And he's a Democrat. And he was elected by the voice of the people to the Senate. And he questioned the deployment in this press conference of federal forces and immigration tactics. And for his trouble, and once again, let me remind you, United States Senator, sitting United States Senator, he was escorted by National Guard, and this is putting it mildly, and FBI, and he identified himself as a United States Senator, and these agents these are Gestapo. These are politicized, and as I've explained to you, there's a Trumpian contingent, and has been since at least 2015, and really earlier than that. And I've talked about this in years previous, when with regard to Clinton and so on and so forth, and the October surprise and all of that stuff, and Rudy Giuliani, who is supposed to have an in with these guys. There's a Trumpian contingent in the FBI, and these are politicized guys. And the Trump administration is replacing the just ordinary law and order FBI guys with these kind of Trumpian contingent guys who are loyal to Trump. Trump wants loyalty not to the Constitution. He could care less about the Constitution, except how he can get around it and how he can violate it. That is all he cares about the Constitution. We've talked about it before. We will undoubtedly talk about it more, but that's just all he cares about. And so he wants people who will be loyal to him. George W. Bush was the same way. He wanted people who were loyal to him. He rewarded loyalty. He didn't care about people who were principled and wanted to obey the Constitution. He wanted people who were loyal to him. And these were the agents who pushed him out and treated him very roughly and handcuffed him and even detained him. And in response to this, the right-wing, fascist, corrupt, controlled corporate media, different levels of that, but Fox News among them, went into action trying to blame this all on Padilla. Noem claimed that Padilla lunged, for example, and that he didn't identify himself, and that she didn't recognize him. This is a person who doesn't recognize the other people in government. And It doesn't matter that Padilla's testimony himself about what happened, the testimony of eyewitnesses, and the video that was shot, they all refute that claim. They don't say that that's what happened at all. That doesn't support Noem's point of view. And Padilla called it Democratic backsliding, which is the least that it could be done. He went on June 17th, he went into the Senate on the floor, and he raised alarms in a June 17th Senate speech. You had some Democrats like Schiff and Harris and Schumer and others. They denounced the incident as an abuse of power and as authoritarian. Some Republicans echoed this concern, as well they might. But I don't think nearly enough was done. And the thing is that this was just swept under the carpet. And one of these things, like in South Park, when the officer says, nothing to see here, move on. This is an outrage. It was set against the max, and the context and significance of this, of course, is that it's set against these mass protests, federal troop deployments in LA, the violation of posse comitatus, as far as I'm concerned, which states that no military troops will be used on United States soil. And I've talked about how there may be certain elements of that, like it may be okay for them to come guard federal buildings, but the National Guard can actually do that, and they've been federalized too. Didn't notify the governor, and there's a case going on about that right now. It's going really slow. As of the time of recording of this, we don't have anything on that. I don't have anything that I can give you on that. But what it does is it highlights these issues of federal overreach, militarization, and suppressed oversight. And I mean, and there should be a hue and a cry about this. Because when a United States senator is handcuffed at a federal press briefing, that should alarm every American, and there should be a hue and a cry. And as I said, on June 12th, the Los Angeles DHS Secretary Kristi Noem announced a crackdown on protesters and immigrants. Senator Alex Padilla, who was escorted in by the National Guard and the FBI, these politicized FBI guys, attempted to ask for answers. Publicly identified himself, as a United States senator, but he was forcibly removed. He was pushed to the ground. He was thrown to the ground. He was tackled, just like a common criminal, and handcuffed anyway. I've been a police officer. I've told you that. I've been a correction officer. I've told you that. I've talked to you about Stripes, where the guy in it is named Francis. Everybody calls him Psycho because he's crazy. And there's a certain point where he states the whole reason why he wanted to join the military, which was because he said, all I know is that finally I'm going to get the chance to kill somebody. These are the kinds of people you have in ICE. And let's face it, ICE is Gestapo. ICE is the Gestapo. It's the politicization of the law enforcement process, to say the very least. But getting back to this, Noem and the federal officials later claimed that Padilla lunged. I said this, and didn't identify himself, but this is not true. He's a United States senator. He doesn't have to lunge. Padilla was on the 17th. He's back on the Senate floor. He delivered an emotional rebuke warning. If this is what they do to a senator, and this is true. And what makes it even worse is that they did it to a Hispanic American, a Latino American, if you want to call it that. And he said, if this is what they do to a senator, imagine what they do to everyday people. And this is a reflection of what they do. If Adam Schiff was there, along with Alex Padilla, maybe they would have done the same thing. Maybe they wouldn't. I nevertheless think that it's significant from the standpoint that he's a Hispanic, and they treated him just like the people that they want to deport, without access and without acknowledgement of the laws that protect these people. And there's more of this going on. I don't even know if I'm going to have time to talk about that. There's some incredible thing going on in New York where they arrested somebody, Kathy once again, I'm trying to stick to what I'm already behind on these things. I'm trying to stick to what it is that I wanted to talk to you about. But there's just so much of this going on. Fellow Democrats called it Democratic backsliding, authoritarian posturing. Some even called for Noem's resignation and investigation. And the idea is that this isn't an isolated scuffle. It happened in the context of mass protest, National Guard and Marines on the streets, arguably illegally mobilized, federalizing the Guard. This in itself is not illegal, but the governor of the state where the Guard is that is being mobilized has to be notified, and there was no consultation, there was no conference, there was no feedback asked for from the governor of the state of California. They just did it. And this is all part of a pattern of militarized federal intervention in American communities. And as I've said, because I know that this is a national show, and actually we have, like I said, we have apparently somebody listens in Italy. They're testing this in California, but listen to me, my listeners, in the 50 states, they're coming for you too. So we need to rise up and remember that we're all in this together, and it's all important that we stand up, because the institutions, like I said, and what is one of the institutions? The people have to rise up in their righteous anger, because these people are not going to go away. You can't just make nice with these people. These people want to overthrow the Constitution. They're absolutely doing everything they can to ignore the laws. I talk about this in one of my videos in Project 2025 that you can go to youtube.com/@politicsbyjake, and it's right there. It's called Project 2025. Actually, I have two of them. I urge you to read them or look at them, because in them I talk about these things. So this is all part of a pattern of militarized federal intervention in American communities. And as I've said before, this is what Trump lusts after. His teeth ache to be able to declare a state of emergency or otherwise suspend the rights of the Constitution. And Padilla's removal is a dangerous signal. Oversight is under attack. And we're watching our institutions being tested. They're being tested, and they're failing. When dissent from a senator is silenced, what chance do the rest of us have? And at this point, let's take a break. This is, and I urge you to tune in, by the way, to Politics by Jake, Mondays and Fridays, 7 a.m. Pacific time on KCAA, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on basically all of the major platforms. Join the conversation before it's too late. Let's have a commercial, and we'll be back. This is Politics by Jake. And now let's pause for a brief commercial message. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting, and I'm back again to talk to you about one of these little wrinkles that can cause a lot of problems and a lot of happiness for people who actually want to own a business, or who have just started a business, or who have been operating a business now for some time. It doesn't really matter. My guess is that you wanted asset protection. That's one of the reasons for starting a business. You wanted to grow wealth, and you wanted to protect the wealth that you created, and you thought that a limited liability company or a corporation would be the way to do that. But did you know that just creating a corporation or a limited liability company does not guarantee that at all? Do you want to know if there's any way to fix that? Go to www.jakelaw.me. That's JAKELAW.me, and watch my video where I talk about this very important thing, and then set up a time where we can have a phone conference, or call me directly now at 573-454-1168. That's 573-454-1168. Call now. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. You know, this show isn't funded by corporate media, big donors, or some shadowy billionaire. It's funded by people who want the truth, unfiltered and unafraid. If that's you, help keep us going, why don't you? Join the mission at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. And let's build something that actually matters. Thanks. Okay, thank you for those comments. Good products, Twain Consulting. Should really check them out. This is Jake with Politics by Jake, and we are back. And I just wanted to update you on some stuff. This stuff with Kristi Noem and Alex Padilla, this is symptomatic and endemic and representative of the way the ICE Gestapo and Tom Homan is part of this. Kristi Noem is also part of it. The way they're acting and the way they're doing things. So we have now, and this is going on, and there is this guy named Brad Lander, and this is New York, and he is the New York City Comptroller. And Lander was arrested and then unarrested, but arrested by ICE Gestapo while attempting to intervene in an immigration court. And this is something that he had done several times previously. And a reporter actually overheard, and this is in the Fixes In department, by the way. A reporter actually overheard ICE agents discussing the arrest beforehand, that it was in fact a setup, because what Lander was doing, and this is the insanity of all this, Lander was attempting to protect immigrants from being taken without judicial warrants. And what does that mean? Without recourse to due process of the law, which is guaranteed under the United States Constitution and extends to even people on the soil of the United States who may not necessarily be citizens of the United States. In the first instance, they have due process, and they cannot, for example, in this case, be taken under arrest for deportation without a judicial warrant. And this is what he was trying to do. And ICE not only arrested, get this, this is unbelievable. ICE not only arrested Lander, who's, an official of the city. He's the financial controller of the city. They not only arrested him, but they also briefly detained a New York Police Department officer who was part of Lander's security detail. And Kristi Noem, or, I guess you could say it was the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, acting through her narrative lens, falsely tweeted that Lander had assaulted officers. DHS, for example, falsely claimed, or I guess I should say claims, that there has been a 413% increase in assaults on ICE Gestapo agents. And this particular incident, was spun to accuse Lander of undermining law enforcement when video showed the opposite. He was just, and the unbelievable part of this is the bar is really low. I mean, it's probably significant because in other countries you don't necessarily get this, although I haven't made a sweeping exposition and analysis of what happens in other countries. But this is the United States. This is the Constitution. Everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Everybody has the right to due process, even Donald Trump. If he were to do something like what he said I could shoot someone on the street in broad daylight and I wouldn't lose any votes. Even though we would see him do this and we would know that he is guilty, he is still innocent until presumed to be guilty, still entitled to due process, but unfortunately, apparently not the controller of the city of New York. So what the propaganda machines that have suborned themselves are the very worst of the corrupt, controlled corporate media did was to accuse Lander of undermining law enforcement. But we have video. Let's hear it for video devices in phones and things like this that show exactly the opposite. And all of this is an absurdity. Understand it's an absurdity. I was watching, I love the show Monty Python, the Monty Python skits. And in this one skit, they arrested someone for something, for whatever, they just decided they were going to arrest him for whatever happened to be in the police station at the time. And in this particular case, it was a desk. And Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul, Gavin Newsom Governor of the state of California, of course, Kathy Hochul, Governor of the state of New York. Hochul delivered a fiery defense, and she said it's BS. She actually said the word. In a podcast, I could say the word. I'm on a radio station. It's governed by the FCC. I'm not sure that I can say the word, but I can't say BS. She said, and I'm transliterating what Governor Hochul actually said. She said it's BS, calling out the injustice of arresting elected officials. Arresting elected officials. Protecting immigrants. Just protecting immigrants. Demanding that they have the same due process right that is guaranteed to them under the Constitution. There's no problem. There's no disconnect between supporting law enforcement and supporting the Constitution. There isn't. There just isn't. So this is just ridiculous. I mean, and Newsom, all similarly angry, and his rage in recent days and weeks has been noted as being inspirational. And it signals a rising resistance among Democratic governors, and you'd better. We've now reached the point where ICE Gestapo is so emboldened, and don't get me started. I was talking to someone the other day. I said, don't get me started on these guys. I was a police officer. I was a correctional officer. I know guys like this. These are guys who get sexually excited when they watch Roadhouse. These are guys who take criminal degrees they get an associate degree or maybe even a bachelor's degree. Honestly, I don't know if there is such a thing in criminal justice and criminal justice, and they can't get on a force. Why can't they get on a force? As someone who did get on a force, who got on two forces, I can tell you it's because they are unprepared and they are unsatisfactory as far as being successful candidates. That's what it is. You go through all sorts of tests in order to become a police officer. I did too. They look at you with careful scrutiny, but you have all these things. You have all these people, and they're just. I could say something different about this, but let's just say they have a certain kind of a zeal. Do you understand what I'm saying when I say they get sexually excited? And I don't know if I'm actually being facetious when I say this, but I'm using that as an example of the inordinate level of excitement that they get to. They get excited when they see things. It's like Francis in Stripes, who I talked about in an earlier segment of the show, who all he wants to do is get to kill somebody. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. These people are a disgrace. In many cases, they're absurdly dressed, absurdly uniformed, and they're an embarrassment to law enforcement. And believe me, there's enough people in law enforcement who are embarrassments to law enforcement, in my opinion, that we don't have to go outside and look at situations like this. But these people are an embarrassment. They are their own shame. They are their own poverty, and they don't even know it. They think they're cool. All right, so I've I've kind of talked about that. I want to talk about it more, but I think at least I'm a little caught up on that. I want to talk about what Robert F. Kennedy has been doing, and he's the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Human Services, and we have a situation that is really dangerous. And I think that what we're doing is if we ignore it, and it's not like it's been totally ignored. The dog and pony show that are Senate confirmation hearings, where they make a show of due diligence, but it's just a fantasy. It's just they ask the questions, the candidate says what they say, and then they go ahead and approve them anyway because they're all Republicans and they're in power and they don't care. They're going to get their people in, and they don't care if, for example, the Secretary of Health and Human Services said, I want to completely destroy the world. They don't care. They're going to vote him in because they have the majority, and they're going to vote him in. It's all right. So this is kind of what RFK has done. RFK, of course, doesn't believe in vaccines, and then he says, "No, I don't." It's not that I don't believe in vaccines. It's just that I don't believe this. So this is what he's done. He has fired the 17 experts and experienced people and RFK. They're blocking vaccine approvals. They said, we're not interested in infectious diseases. We care about chronic diseases. Well, I ask you this. What are you doing there as far as chronic diseases are concerned? As far as I can see, it's precious little. And then there were 2 or 3 key meetings. There was the meeting that was supposed to be held earlier this spring, where they would decide which of the strains of influenza needed to be encouraged, right? It can usually have 2, sometimes 3 of these, and that's the basis for the vaccines. The one that's most likely to be prevalent, and it may mutate, but to make a vaccine out of it, because you're always a year behind. You're always a year behind on the vaccines, is going to be the most beneficial to the people, who's going to help them. So there's a meeting that's supposed to do that, and he canceled it. You may have heard about it in the news, and it looks to me like it's actually wasn't rescheduled. It looks like it wasn't held, and so they met informally to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. But this was not under the aegis of the United States government. Do you understand? This was a sort of an ad hoc, do-it-yourself type of thing. And then what that leaves is a problem. It's one thing to have a vaccine theoretically available, okay? The other question is, who can afford it? If it's not, for example, for school children, if it's not on the obligatory schedule, if it's not designated by the Secretary of Health and Human Services to be essential to have school kids immunized, then you may be able to get it, but your insurance won't pay for it. And I assure you, the insurance will take the opportunity. They'll eagerly welcome the opportunity not to pay, because they'll say this: well, the CDC says this isn't essential, and therefore we're going to leave it. It's up to you. Leave it up to you. You can decide. All that wonderful freedom, the wonderful freedom means that you pay. So what we're talking about here is if it's compulsory and obligatory, the insurance company will probably have to pay. But the way it works is, and I just, the old saying, 10 will get you 20. If it's not compulsory and if it's not obligatory, the insurance company is going to do everything they can do not to pay. So that's what's going on here. And RFK has talked about a couple of these people. They talk about the poor in the global south, or the poor in the American hinterland, and all of that stuff. So, they're libertarians, right? And this is, part of libertarianism. And according to some of the critics here, what we're seeing is an assault on science, which is partially conducted under this banner of libertarianism. And the libertarianism are free riders. They'll take anything the government gives as long as they don't have to pay for it, as long as they don't have to pay their fair share. They have that in common with the financial elites who threw Joe Biden out of the candidacy, who threatened him, and who wanted to replace him with a free convention because, like I said, they didn't want Kamala Harris either. They were able to deal with her and work with her, and that's why they left her in. So, of course, Trump is a friend of the masses, supposedly, right? But what about this? You're making it harder to get these shots. And we're supposed to be indignant. And this is another funny thing. People are indignant that it didn't provide 100% coverage. Well, they never claimed. People who knew what they were talking about never did. They said, this is 90% effective, 95% effective. We're 90% effective. That means 10% of the people are in danger of getting it. Now, let's go back. Who are the new people? And I say there's 5 of the 17, now it's 8. It is the Committee on Immunization Practices. It's an advisory committee on immunization practices. So remember, in the hearings, Senator Cassidy of Louisiana at least tried to get Kennedy to promise that he would not completely overthrow this. And he should have used more lawyerly approach. Because if you say, I'm not going to interfere with ACIP, that could mean I'm going to kick everybody out and replace them with my own appointees, but I'll leave the committee. See what I mean? So there'll still be a committee. And what I think Cassidy was driving at, which, is that you're going to purge them, aren't you? Are you going to fire them all? And therefore, I kind of think that that's, kind of negligence on the part of Cassidy, because Kennedy's a very evasive, elusive guy. He's a drug addict. He's a heroin addict for, I think it's something like 13 or 15 years. And it's not really aware. He says he's off of the stuff, but it's not clear that he's off of the stuff. And he's evasive. He's elusive. His whole stock and trade is to say one thing and then deny that he said it and then come back to it. So, okay, so we're actually out of time. And I'll try to get and pick up. There's just so much going on. It's tough to do it justice, and there's so many things to talk about, which in its own way for somebody like me is a blessing and it's a curse. But there it is. We're up to the weekend. We'll all have just a great weekend, and we'll be back with another show. And this is Politics by Jake. And now let's pause for a brief commercial message. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting, and I'm back again to talk to you about one of these little wrinkles that can cause a lot of problems and a lot of happiness for people who actually want to own a business, or who have just started a business, or who have been operating a business now for some time. It doesn't really matter. My guess is that you wanted asset protection. That's one of the reasons for starting a business. You wanted to grow wealth, and you wanted to protect the wealth that you created, and you thought that a limited liability company or a corporation would be the way to do that. But did you know that just creating a corporation or a limited liability company does not guarantee that at all? Do you want to know if there's any way to fix that? Go to www.jakelaw.me. That's JAKELAW.me, and watch my video where I talk about this very important thing, and then set up a time where we can have a phone conference, or call me directly now at 573-454-1168. That's 573-454-1168. Call now. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together.